think Turkey is playing an increasingly vocal role in the Middle East, actually in global politics, to be honest. And we're going to talk about Turkish relations with China, with Russia, with Ukraine. Like, you've got relationships as a country with pretty much all parties, which makes you makes you a good mediator between all these parties as well. But there's one point of concern that a lot of people are talking about, and that's Turkey's been the most vocal against Israel, condemning Israel. You've got Prime Minister Netanyahu recognizing the Armenian genocide as well, which President Erdogan was not too happy with. And it's escalating further. There's been reports that Israel has struck Turkish surveillance systems in Syria. Obviously, Turkey has not confirmed that, so we're not sure if it's true or not. But these are allegations by Israel. And then you've also got the Israeli air defense system that's being installed in Cyprus, which obviously is, very close to Turkey, and there's a long history there that we won't get into. And last time that Cyprus tried to install a defense system, I think it was the S-300, the Russian system, Turkey was pretty upset, and there were threats made, and that system was not installed. Now an Israeli air defense system is being installed very close to your borders. What do you make of that tension between Israel and Turkey? And if you can comment on all these different examples that are provided, including the rhetoric between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Erdogan.
I mean, there are a lot of new dynamics in the relationship between Israel and Turkey. I mean, there has been ups and downs over the course of history, especially when we look at the last 10 decades. Just imagine before the October the 7th, there was a sort of peace process between Houthis and Saudi Arabia, and there was a rapprochement process between Turkey and Syria, and there was even a rapprochement normalization process between Turkey and Israel. So the probably Netanyahu was planning to visit Turkey after 2 years and 3 years of heavy rhetoric which has been used by two sides. So, and after the 1 day, or actually 1 hour after the October the 7th, 6:30, everything has changed, and I think everything has failed in the region. Now there are new dynamics between Israel and Turkey. Number one, of course. Historically, the Palestinian issue has been always epicenter in the relationship between Turkey and Israel. And Turkey has been really supportive to establishment and just peace and Palestinian state with reference to the United Nations Security Council resolutions. And Turkey has been always criticizing Israel in terms of its military involvement into the West Bank, Gaza, and other, part of the Palestinian. So Turkey has been really criticizing Israel. But in the last decade, I think there has been new dynamics, especially the regional dynamics, because of the developments within the context of Arab uprising. But after the October 7th, now we have new realities between two countries. Syria, I think, is number one. As you know, after the fall of Assad regime, Turkey has been really eager to support the transitional period in Syria. Turkey, of course, has been strongly supporting the opposition groups before the fall of Assad regime. And in the post-Assad era, Turkey was the only country in the region that could deliver what Syria needs in terms of its, sustainable stability, political order, and security order. But because of the Turkey's involvement and because of Turkey's strategic leverage in Syria, Israel saw the new opportunity in the lack of central authority in Syria. And Israel perceived Turkey as a threat because the more Turkey's engagement in Syria, and Turkey will get more in terms of strategic gain. Of course, Turkey has been really supportive of the other countries, especially the regional countries' involvement into the new reconstruction and post-conflict Syrian process. But as you remember, Turkey's ambassador to Ankara was mentioning that Israel does not want a strong Syria. So Turkey, I think, is the critical country in terms of establishing a strong Syria. Now, Syria, I think Israel and Turkey has different priorities in Syria. This is number one. I think this is a really important because it means that there will be a potential conflict of interest even direct military conflict between Turkey and Israel if Israel continues its sort of role to undermine the Syrian sovereignty. So
Okay.
this is the new reality, I think.
Okay, I want to press on that. That's actually really interesting. So I spoke to Tom Barak, who I know President Erdogan speaks to, and you probably speak to on a regular basis. And I asked him that question because I'm trying to understand: does Israel really want a weak Syria, a weak Lebanon, or they want normalizations with those countries like they had with Jordan and Egypt? Jordan and Egypt, which are they receive a lot of military aid from the US, and that happened after they normalized relations with Israel. So I'm like, is Syria and Lebanon going to head down the similar path to those countries? And he seemed optimistic that Israel wants to normalize relations with those countries. Now, many people have the concerns of Greater Israel, which includes territory in Lebanon and Syria. Do you think Israel genuinely wants a weaker Syria, or they don't mind Syria to start to flourish as long as the risks, the defense risks that Israel faces on that border is mitigated or resolved? And number two, if there's that conflict of interest, if what you're saying, and you kind of implied that Israel wants a weaker Syria, if that's the case, what could happen? Like if Turkey is looking to strengthen Syria, and you guys are working with President Shalani, President Shara, very actively in achieving that, if Israel trying to do the opposite, what could that lead to?
I mean, that's the main question, of course, that we are trying to answer here in Turkey. What will be the potential scenarios between Turkey and Israel if they cannot, agree over these certain points about the future of Syria? This is a really important concern here in Turkey. Of course, Syria has also the same concern. But I think I can see the same concern in Israel, because Israel doesn't want to fight with Turkey. Israel doesn't want to clash with Turkey in Syria, because Turkey is a different country. It's not comparable with Iran. It's not comparable with Syria and other Gulf countries. Turkey is a NATO member. Turkey is the second largest army within the NATO's military concept. Turkey is militarily ready. Turkey's military readiness is really high. Turkey's societal support is really strong. So therefore, Israel, I think, has also concerns, and they are trying to avoid conflict with Turkey. But the main problem is, yes, Israel doesn't want a strong neighbors. I mean, this is an historical doctrine of Israel. It's part of its strategic culture.
Well, what about Jordan and Egypt? What about Jordan and Egypt, Murat?
Yeah, I mean, Egypt is a really strong country, but I mean, Jordan, yes, it's in sort of there are different agreements between Israel and Jordan. I mean, as you know, Jordan has played vital role while the protecting of Israeli airspace, sort of to prevent the Iranian missile attacks against Israel during the 12 days wars. So I mean, do you see what I mean? Yes, they don't have the same perception about the region, but one way or another, one reason or another, they have to communicate. They have to work together. So Egypt is gradually changing its position vis-a-vis Israel. We have to accept this. The region is changing because no one, I think, likes what Israel is doing, what Israel is trying to do in our region. When it comes to the Israel's perception about the weak neighbors. So this is, I think, the part of the Israeli strategic culture. But it's again, it's an irrational policy. If Syria is going to be a strong state, it will be benefit for Israel. If Turkey will work a lot to stabilize Syria with the contribution of other neighboring countries, it will be benefit for Israel, because it will be a secure Syria. It will be a stable Syria. But Israel, I think, does not want to see the potential competitors in its close, neighborhoods. So therefore, I think if there will be sort of a continuation of disagreements between Turkey and Israel, I'm afraid that we can see intensification of this rivalry in the region. Now it's a competition period. Both countries are rivalries against each other, but Syria is an existential issue for Turkey. It's not about Israel. It's about the entire stability. Turkey, I think, perceived from a very holistic perspective. There is a YPG issue there. While Turkey is now leading its own peace process inside Turkey, at the same time, Turkey has to also concern what's going to be in terms of the agreements between the central government in Damascus and YPG. So this is also important. So we know that there is also other threats in Syria, like ISIS. I mean Daesh.
They're gaining a lot of they're gaining a lot of traction. I saw news yesterday that they're starting to get they're starting to advance.
We have to focus all these, the grievances, all these. So therefore, the normalization is important, but not under the the sort of priorities of Israel. Israel wants normalization only under its own conditions. I mean, you can normalize your relations. For example, we really were eager to speak about the normalization before